The Center for World War II Studies and Conflict Resolution at Brookdale Community College presents its Fall 2012 lecture series. In this program, The Cannon King's Daughter, with author and military historian David Stroebel. At the lectern to introduce the program is Professor Paul Zygo, Director of the Center for World War II Studies and Conflict Resolution at Brookdale Community College.
All right, good evening, everybody. And I see a lot of familiar faces, and I truly do welcome you back to this program as part of our World War II Studies series here at Brookdale. This is now the third of the series. In essence, we have two more to go. And if you have one of those printed programs in front of you, you'll have an idea of what those programs happen to be. One happens to be featuring an individual by the name of Dr. Jack Needle. He'll be talking about how a number of men organized by the United States military moved all throughout Europe, right behind the front lines, with the determined task to rescue the stolen art that the Germans had, in essence, secluded in Germany after having stolen it from various museums, well, in Belgium, in France, and elsewhere. It's an amazing story, and Jack will be coming to speak about that, and I welcome you to come on back and hear that story. And since we're talking about Germany, well, let me take it a step further. A couple of months ago, I had a visit by the gentleman standing behind me, and what he had mentioned is the fact that he did have a very, very strong connection with that nation, and that was via the family. And when I asked him to relay what that connection happened to be, what was very, very interesting is he relayed, in essence, a part of German history that I'd not heard before. And he so impressed me, and I do mean that, he so impressed me, that I've asked him to come back and be a speaker before all of us, and let him tell you the story that he relayed to me. He's going to be talking about the family known as the Krupp family. Very interesting thing is, David Stroebel is a member of that family. So from a personal family relationship, he's going to now relate to you the story that he related to me. And I believe you're going to find it just as much as interest as I did. He is going to relate a unique aspect of German history. Ladies and gentlemen, David Stroebel.
Good evening, everyone. First, thank you very much for coming out to hear me speak. I come here, I'm dressed in a suit and a tie because I realize what I'm about to tell you is very important, and the way that I convey that to you is that I dress appropriately so that you take in what I'm saying, and if I came to all this trouble to write the book and dress nicely, that it's a very important subject that I want to talk to you about. And I feel that it deserves the respect of, putting on a suit for. My name is David Stroebel. I live in Ocean Township, New Jersey. And before I start, are there any members of the media here? No? Okay. Growing up, I asked my parents 3 times. I said, hey, Mom, Dad, where's the Stroebel family from in Germany? Essen. Okay, thanks. Along I went, and it wasn't enough to put me on a path like I'm on today. In 2008, the course of my life changed, and it's never been the same. Let's see. What do you do when 3 elderly relatives, distant elderly relatives, tell you that your great-grandmother was forced out of her Krupp dynasty family in Germany because she refused to break off an engagement with a poor Catholic shoemaker? Well, in Germany, the Krupp family was Protestant, and my great-grandfather was Catholic. Number one, you don't marry a poor individual, a poor shoemaker, and you don't marry a Catholic. So you can imagine the combination of that. But I made an 8-page list of points that I want to stick to, and so you get a full detail of this story. So bear with me. In 2008, when my Aunt Gloria died, I decided, I'm going to write a family tree. Aunt Gloria is one of 13 kids my grandparents had. Now there's only 2 left. My dad passed away 2 years, October 29th. So I took it upon myself. I said, let me write this tree just to make sure nobody forgets the names. And, well, one thing led to another, and I was doing it on Ancestry.com and knew nothing about genealogy. Didn't even know how to spell it. And I started to find these documents. They're photocopies of census records and other records, and I thought that it was pretty neat that I could see the actual copy. And then when I saw the names of my grandmother and grandfather, my grandfather died in 1928 in Jersey City. That's where the Stroebels are from. And I decided that I wanted to know if my grandfather had any siblings, because I never met him. My grandfather, he died in 1928. And kept digging through Ancestry.com, and I found a 1900 census, and there was my grandfather with his 2 brothers. At last, there was an Adolf, and there was a John Stroebel Jr. And I looked up, and I said, wow, and that must be their parents, John and Bertha Stroebel. And I remember to this day saying, Bertha, why couldn't it be a cool name like Raquel or, Lauren, something like that? And I remember remarking what a very old-fashioned conservative name Bertha was. So now I have a background as an Air Force enlisted field historian, which means I know how to pick up a phone and knock on a door to ask you for questions and documents. So I'm not a shy guy. So I put my talents to use, and I started to find this information. I wanted to know where in Germany my great-grandparents were from. They started it all here in America, from Germany. So I located the documents on Ancestry.com and found that the name of the town, Sigmaringen, was listed right on my great-grandmother's immigration record. It said it right on there, Sigmaringen, Baden-Württemberg. So it made it easy. But I didn't know where my great-grandfather was born. So this is why I stuck with this genealogy thing. I just wanted to get this out of the way, and I was done. It didn't interest me, and I had 3 little kids. Well, actually, 2 little kids at the time. Now I have 3. So I looked and really dug, and I discovered a website called rootsweb.com on the internet. These were mailing lists for every county in America. And these people who belonged to these lists would help you. You join the list, you'd send an email to the list, and you get back a lot of replies from people who knew their stuff. So I came across these documents and wanted to know more about where he was born. And in the process, I said, well, to help me along, I'm going to find out if there's any living survivors from my grandfather's 2 siblings, Adolf Stroebel and John Stroebel Jr. And it was quite difficult. I didn't know where to start, not knowing anything about genealogy. So I just started asking people, how do I do this? So I did it. And what I relied on were obituaries in newspapers all over the state. And luckily, the obituary that I was looking for Adolf's wife was in Monmouth County, because she died in Lakehurst. So the Asbury Park Press covered that. And the first relative that I contacted, there were 3 key relatives that gave me revelations. This is not my story, this is their story, and I'm communicating their story to you through a book that I put together from all their revelations and photographs. The first relative was Theodore Beebe. He was the son of Josephine Stroebel, who was the daughter of John Stroebel Jr. And I tracked Ted through an obituary for his Uncle Teddy in Monticello, Teddy Stroebel. And I, excuse me, I was referred to Teddy by by Teddy Stroebel's companion in Monticello. He said, "Here, call Ted. He's got all my photographs and he's got stories for you." So good. I said, "Thank you very much." And I called Ted. He was very friendly, and I said, "You know, Ted, I'm just writing our family history. I was wondering if you could, you know, help me out. This is who I am. Your grandfather was my granduncle, and Ted is 87 years old today, 88 years old." So Ted began to provide me with 3 revelations about our family. He said, says, "I bet you don't know that our great-grandparents worked for Kaiser Wilhelm in Germany, did you?" And I have to be honest, I said, "Ted, no." I said, "Who's that?" I thought it was a role. I'm sorry. It's just like I don't know Australian history and I don't know the history of, you know, Tunisia. I didn't know. I was up front. And he said, "You don't know your German history, do you?" I said, "No, I guess not." He said, "He's the emperor. He's like the president of Germany." And I said, "Oh, that's great." I said, "Ted, how does one of our family members get a job with the president of a country?" He says, "Don't know, but you got to be connected." He was a bootblack and she worked in the kitchen. She liked to make omelets. So I was pretty amazed at that story. Then he told me another story. He said there was always piles of money in the John Stroebel household. Where it came from, it was never brought up. No questions about where it came from and no answers were ever volunteered. But whenever it was needed, there were piles of money everywhere. And the third revelation was that he felt as though there was some kind of scandal in our family. Now we're talking the turn of the 20th century, 1900. And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it. My mother would never tell me. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe, you know, I'm thinking maybe it was someone in our family married someone who was Jewish. And back then, I guess they did not, want to, those situations to occur. But that was then, and this is now. And he referred me to his cousin Charlie Stroebel, whose grandfather is John Stroebel Jr. And Charlie is 79 now. But I didn't follow up with Charlie right away. I got an obituary for Adolf's granddaughter, who was born in around 1926. And her name was Caroline Bildstein. And she got married and became Caroline Marchuk. And I went to whitepages.com. I found her address and her phone number, called her up. And I said as nicely as I could, I said, "Hi, is this Caroline?" She says, "Yes." "Who is this?" I said, "Well, I expected that." I said, "Hi, my name is Dave Stroebel. That's my grandfather's name." "Oh, good. I'm on the right track." The reason why I'm calling Caroline is trying to get some information about our great-grandparents. I'm writing, the family tree and all that stuff. I said, "By any chance, would you know where he was born in Germany, John Stroebel, Sr.?" Now, I have to stop and tell you my thoughts about Caroline when I first spoke to her. She processed information very quickly. She talked kind of rapidly, which my wife tells me is a sign of intelligence. For a woman for 86, she did not look 86. I would say maybe 66. And she told me no when she meant no. She didn't say, maybe. No, I don't remember. So my credibility with Caroline was kind of established when I talked to her. But I was not prepared for what she was about to tell me. And this was September 18th, 2008. So Caroline stops me and says, "John Stroebel? Yeah, he married that Bertha Krupp from the big ammunition family in Germany. There was a big investigation, and they got in trouble." Thank you. Yeah. And I stopped, and I said, I'm driving up Kozlowski Road in Freehold on the way home on my cell phone. And I said, "Well, no, I have her death record. Her last name was Arnold." She proceeds to correct me. "No, her name was Bertha Krupp from that big ammunition family. And the one that made the Big Bertha gun? I said, no, I didn't know. I remember watching Bugs Bunny and seeing Big Bertha on, but I'm being honest with you, folks. This is, my extent to the knowledge of the Krupps. So I said, Caroline, her name was Arnold, in a nice way, not to get her mad. And she was emphatic and said, no, he married that Bertha Krupp from the big ammunition family. They went with the Big Bertha gun, and they got in trouble. The big investigation. And later analyzing that big investigation, if you knew what that big investigation was, the Nuremberg tribunals. And so she proceeds to give me 5 revelations. First one. My glasses on. My great-grandfather, John Stroebel, married Bertha Krupp from the Krupp dynasty. And after departing Villa Hugel for the last time, Villa Hugel was the Krupp estate in Essen. It's a huge mansion. It now holds the Alfred Krupp Foundation and archives. After they left, they announced their plans to get married. Their parents did not approve and said it's either, stay or go. You can't stay with him. You cannot marry him. She chose him, and they, Caroline's words, kicked her out of the family. And of course, John was fired from his job as a bootblack. So the next move they made was to a small city by the sea. But Caroline said she can't remember the name of it anymore. And they stayed there, and she said they must have emigrated after that. And she said my great-grandfather opened a shoemaking business on Palisade Avenue in Jersey City. And there was a famous jeweler from New York City that was friendly with my great-grandfather. Bless you. My great-grandfather owned a saloon on Congress Street and Jersey City. And this famous jeweler would always come in when he was in town and, talk to my great-grandfather. And this was one of my first challenges. How do you determine who is the famous New York City jeweler? I logically made a list of every jeweler that I could. I started eliminating each one. Well, the first, I should go backtrack and say, I didn't know how to corroborate the boot-making business in Jersey City when they first emigrated. And I just started asking people, how do I find this stuff out? Ancestry.com's got old address directories. Beautiful. Okay, I'll look for them. And lo and behold, I found that directory from 1883 when they first got here. Bam, there he was, 356 Palisade Avenue in Jersey City. And Caroline told me that it was near all those steps going down the hill. I didn't know. I called my Aunt Dorothy, 82 years old. I said, Aunt Dorothy, here's the scoop, blah, blah. What are the steps she's talking about? Down by Palisade Avenue. She says, oh, it's 100 steps going down to down the hill. That's exactly what it is. And Caroline mentioned that it was near Franklin Street. So I went on Google Maps, and I found 356 Palisade, half a block from the street where the steps were going down into Patterson Plank Road. Right there, I said, okay, all right. One for Caroline. And number 2 was the New York City jeweler. Now, I said to myself, wow, I said, before I can even go any further with this, I gotta establish her credibility. She's 86, but, my dad had dementia, and she, showed no signs of that. That's for sure. No doubt in my mind. So I go back to the jeweler, and I say, how do I find this out? And I found this RootsWeb website where I can join this mailing list called NJ Hudson at RootsWeb. So everybody who's doing genealogy in Hudson County, join this thing. You ask a question and get back, a couple dozen replies. And I said, hey, does anybody know, a famous jeweler, New York City jeweler that worked in Jersey City, came over here in business? Somebody replied back. They said, well, we're on the trail of a Joseph Briggs house in Jersey City. He worked for Tiffany. He was his artist. And I went, who? Tiffany? And then I had him tell me the name. Which Tiffany? Louis Comfort Tiffany Jr. I went, son of a gun. So now I learned how to use Google really well. So I do a search that takes me, 3 days, many hours every day, searching for keyword terms like Tiffany relative, Tiffany grandson, granddaughter. And I get a hit, Michael Burlingham. He's the great-grandson of Louis Comfort Tiffany Jr. So I sent him an email. I'm flying under the radar. I have it in me. No one's going to know what I'm doing. It's just a book on the Krupp dynasty. So I have to keep a very tight lid on this. So I say, hi, Mr. Burlingham. I'm Dave Stroebel. I'm writing my family history. And, rumor has it in my family that my grandfather, great-grandfather, knew your great-grandfather because he came over and did business in Jersey City. Is that true? Can you confirm that he did business in Jersey City? And, he said, well, I'll have to get back to you. I don't know. And about 3 days later, he got back to me and said, hey, I've got good news for you. My great-grandfather absolutely came to Jersey City on many occasions. He had 3 businesses there that supported the jewelry business in New York City. And I went, 2 for Caroline. I said, wow. Unbelievable. Okay. Another toughie. She said, and I'll explain the dollar amount, that Engelbertha got $10,000 from the Krupps to immigrate with the words, not just, these are actual adjectives to describe the situation, not just a fact. Father said, never darken my door again. Those are the words Caroline used. And I went, wow, that's a medieval way of saying things, like you'd say it in 1874 when I think she was banished, the year. So I said, that's a lot of money that she must have brought over. But it wasn't dollars because, of course, Germany, it was Deutschmark. It had just changed to the Deutschmark. I had to research that for this book. From talers, I believe how you pronounce it, talers, over to Deutschmark. So that was a struggle, too, finding out what kind of currency it was, and I had to be accurate. So I found out it was Deutschmark, and $10,000, of course, doesn't sound right. And there's a website that I use called measuringworth.com, run and operated by 2 economics professors somewhere in the U.S., New Mexico, but measuringworth.com, you can go out and check it out. You can put in a figure and the year. It'll tell you what it would be worth today. So if someone gave you $1 in 1930, you can find that today it's got the buying power of, $80 or whatever it may be. That's just an explanation or just an example. So, $10,000. I'm going to speed ahead and say the $10,000 was a figure communicated to from John Stroebel Sr. in 1930 when he died to his son. And I think the reason why he used a low number like $10,000 is that, what if you kept that secret from your kids for, let's see, 30, 45 years? And all of a sudden, you tell them you really have $4 million. What are they going to say? Oh, Dad, come on, I need some money right now. Why didn't you tell me about this? You would get the 3rd degree. So to kind of soften any response, he'd say $10,000. Yeah, $10,000. That's what we got. So how do I go and prove this? It was a lot of money, by the way, and I'll tell you that we came to a conclusion. My cousin Ted and I, he did it independently without telling me. He said, yeah, that's what I got. I was like, wow, okay. I added up, what would it cost to live in Jersey City? Right? Fair. How do you find out what the rents were? Go find old books online like I did. But the furthest back it would take me, I believe, was about 1903, but close enough. They lived there 1883 to 1915. Close enough. I saw what Germans paid for rent versus the Irish, who paid a lot more than anybody else. So Then you add up utilities, and you add up things like the business. And I concluded, I said, Ted, I'm coming up with a figure about $200,000 in 1883 dollars. He says, yeah, that's what I got. I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you go to measuringworth.com. I did the math, and I can tell you that today, that's $4.3 million minimum. It gives you a range. I took the lowest range. So, and he agreed, he came up with the same figure. And this is what we believe Alfred Krupp gave his daughter. Let's just say he was forced to give to her because she went back there, we believe. There are events that tell us that they had no money, and then all of a sudden they had money. It was 8 years later, so it was 8 years that she went back. It's up to Essen. So let's see. How did I solve the money thing? Hey, how do I do this? I asked people, how do I find out if someone had money in, looking in the records, in the town records? I tried the bank route. I called a bank closest to them when it was the First Trust of New Jersey back in 1883, and find out today it's owned by Capital One Bank. I mean, I took that much painstaking time. I followed each sale of the bank, and it took me, that must have taken me 3 months. And asking them, how long do you keep these records? That I could see what their balance was. And they said, 6 years. That's it. I said, So I'm hoping, someone's got a bank book in their attic from their great-grandfather, and they don't want to get rid of it because they'll get in trouble, And well, anyway, but I went and got land records in the clerk's office. Somebody said, you're going to find out if they own property and own, a house and things like that. So I ran up to Jersey City and looked through and came up absolutely empty. A little disappointed. I did find out through historical address directories they moved 13 times in Jersey City. Then I asked a genealogist, what do you get from that? And they said, well, chances are they had their rent raised constantly because the landlord saw something, the way they were dressed, and that they could afford more. So at a principle, they kept moving all around Jersey City from 1883 till 1915. And after Jersey City, and the revelations from my cousin Ted up in Albany, saying there was always piles of money everywhere. And the fact that my great-grandfather, after Engelbertha died in 1911, his son John Jr. says, Dad, come live with me. Mom's gone. Adolf and Otto have lots of kids. Come and live with us. Okay. Goes to Albany in 1915. So I go to Albany and hit the jackpot. I was very careful to research and fortunate enough to find the 8 different occupations this John Stroebel Jr. held. It was very crucial in my research to prove that he didn't have the education to generate this income. Neither did his wife. His wife, Linda Barbara Fritchie, her parents were still alive. They certainly did not have any money and did not give them any large sums while they were still living. Anything that was left over was given to one of their children named Florentine. And that's a fact. So go to Albany, hit the jackpot. I discover as early as 1923, John Stroebel Jr., who's held minimum wage jobs, soft drink, clerk, bartender, shipping clerk, so on and so forth, all of a sudden has started to collect homes. I didn't say buy. You buy and then you sell to afford the next one. He was keeping them. And I said, wow. I said, this is it. But I expected it. And I said, look at these revelations, being corroborated from Caroline. And she was telling me like boom, 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 like this. And the thing with the Essen with my family, I'm like, wow. I said, these pieces, let's just connect the dots. Let's just see what kind of picture we get. So now I'm really getting interested in this. I know I'm spending lots and lots of time. Taking days off my wife never knew about. I picked the New Jersey archives clean Up in Jersey City, clean. The clerk's office in Albany, Monticello, and Hudson County, clean. I made 13 trips to Trenton alone just for that location. And so I found all these deeds. But unfortunately, they don't tell you. By law, they let you get away with not saying how much you paid for the property, which really irked me. And the reason why I went up to Albany is because my cousin Charlie, the 79-year-old, said, telling me with the words that his grandfather, John Stroebel Jr., was buying up the whole block. I said, buying up the whole block? Okay, time to go to Albany. And when I got there, boy, I hit the jackpot. Bought 6 homes, collected them, bought 3 pieces of property, took out another loan for someone for a mortgage. They was very kind. And all the while, not really holding down too many jobs. They opened up a family bar and grill in a very, very small home on 55 Ontario Street in Albany. I've been there. My cousin Ted took me there. It is the tiny, tiny home. I can't imagine fitting enough people in that first floor, because they lived on the second floor, for them to turn over a profit. And I can tell you this. The third part of this whole thing, the third person responsible for revelations and photographs was Charlie Stroebel. He came last. Charlie gave me a lot of revelations that were very damaging and crucial to my research. Now, I researched the law and was quite confident that if I recorded my conversations, that it was perfectly legal, and it was. In New Jersey and all over the country, if you record a conversation between you and someone else, that's legal. As soon as a third person comes in, you don't tell them, now it's illegal. So I would record the telephone calls from my relatives and not tell them. This way, everything would come out naturally, and I would have a verbatim record of all the conversations. It was crucial. I was onto something big, and I said, no, let's do this the right way. Don't tell them, because then they won't be forthcoming. Charlie starts telling me about his grandfather, John Stroebel Jr. In case you get lost, Jr. is the son of Engelbertha. He says, I used to go to the bank every 2 weeks with my grandpa. I'd take a cloth bag, and I would come home with $10,000 every 2 weeks. He would use it to cash the checks of the railroad workers in the bar and grill. And I said, $10,000. Measuringworth.com, remember? So you mean to tell me that in this year, 1940, 42-ish, Charlie's about 12, that John Stroebel Jr. and his small, tiny bar and grill is going through $80,000 a month? Because that's what that comes out to when you turn it around in $2012. And I said to myself, okay, well, it's clear that it was just not to cash the checks. And Ted, living in the same area, said, Dave, don't believe it. He says, there were not that many railroad workers in that area. There was a fire that devastated that whole area. It never came back. He said, like I said, there was always piles of money in that family. Never asked any information about it. No information was ever volunteered. But when it was needed, it was there. And so I get these stories about $80,000 a month to cash the checks. And I made a note. You know how much the bar and grill would have to do? I made a note about what an average McDonald's makes today. You know those McDonald's are busy. Just pick a McDonald's. You know it's busy. You can count the customers, you know. Let's see. Well, you know, I'll go by memory. He would have to bring in roughly $5,300 a day to be able to say, yeah, I need $80,000 a month to cash all these checks. You know how much McDonald's does each day in sales? just about $2,000 more a day, the average McDonald's. And found it very interesting because you know what he was doing. They were living off the money. They had 5 children. They were feeding them. They were clothing them. You know, then came the fun time, vacations at Asbury Park all the way from Albany. And so it was clear now that when John Stroebel Sr., the money from the Krupps, went to Albany, naturally he took his bank account with him. And both of their names were identical, John Joseph Stroebel. The only difference was one was a junior, one was a senior. Charlie tells me another story. He says, Dave, I was about 12 years old. I get a notice from the bank. They say I failed to keep $100 in the account and they're going to close it. My grandpa takes me by the hand and says, come with me. They go down to the bank. This is John Stroebel Jr., who was a clerk and a coppersmith for a short time. He says, what's this? To the manager. Well, Mr. Stroebel, that comes out automatically to anybody whose account falls under $100. You know, Charlie is only 12, you know. It's done automatically. We don't control who gets the letter. Everybody gets the letter. And he says, yeah. He says, you close his account, you can close all my accounts. Counts, not account. Now I went back and had to do research on the FDIC, Federal Depositor Insurance Corporation. What did they, how much, what's the limit you were insured by on these accounts back then, 1940-ish? $44,000 per account. So you can surmise, I surmise that he had many accounts set up because if the banks and they were failing during in the 1930s, who knows if he lost money? Don't know. Now, another story where, and I'm going to check my notes so I don't miss anything. (1950) tells me his mother needed emergency surgery in the hospital, and my grandpa bought a brown paper bag filled with, let's see, the equivalent today, I think it was also $10,000, the equivalent today of $80,000, and gave it to the doctor, just like that. Unaffected, didn't affect the family's finances at all. Everything I speak about is not affecting their finances. At least 2 occasions, Charlie's father, John Sedan Stroebel, says, hey, Charlie, go down the cellar and get me $16,000 so I can pay this guy. It was really something like $1,200, but you convert it to today's dollars. And he would go down the cellar into the rafters, get the cigar box, and bring up $1,600. That happened on more than 2 occasions. After John Stroebel Jr. died in 1958, the family kept getting notice after notice of CD maturations. The CD's ready. You know, what do you want to do with it? They had no idea he had so many CDs he invested in. So there's obviously, I was very confident. This is what put me over the top with Caroline, and I said, it's time to take this up to a different level now. I said, she's got my attention. She's established her credibility. You know, I'm connecting the dots, and I cannot believe what I'm finding here. I went to Albany a year ago because Ted had letters that were written between his brother and his mother, Josephine. He donated them to the library up there. So I drove up last year, and my other cousin met me up there, who's my age, Faith. We go through them, and we find 2 valuable pieces of information. One is that Linda Barbara Stroebel, John Stroebel Jr.'s wife, really adores her new daughter-in-law, John Sedan Stroebel's wife, so much that she decides to go out and buy her 3 diamond rings. One was a wedding ring. One was a regular, diamond ring. The other one was a pearl ring. This was in the letter that I read from Josephine to her younger son. And another comment, and Grandma doesn't know what to do with her money, so she's going to think about where she wants to invest it. I said, I know what she should do with her money. I said she should, fess up to her other two brother-in-laws and say, this is everybody's money, not just mine. But that's the first time I'm saying that. Yeah, it was a lot. Here's an interesting fact in my research to prove that this Engelbertha Krupp was who she was. And I should tell you, I performed a lot of searches on the internet, could not find any trace of Engelbertha Krupp. It was troubling me that I found such overwhelming evidence. I said, where is her? Where's a mention of her? And I picked up The Arms of Krupp by William Manchester, and it was one of the best things I did. First, I said to myself also, my great-grandparents had a total of 5 children. 2 died, 3 survived and lived in Jersey City. 1 moved to Albany. I said, I want to know all these children. I want their baptism records. I want to see what their first and middle names are on the day they were baptized. Then, parents changed their names down the road. But I wanted to know. I wanted to see from what family they drew these names from. Because in Germany, there's something called naming conventions, and they were very strict. If I had a son, I would name him after my father. Another son, my grandfather. First daughter, it's the wife's mother. Second daughter, the wife's grandmother. So I got these documents, and boy, it took quite a while. And I discovered the first one from Walburga Bertha Stroebel, who died in Sigmaringen at the age of 5 weeks. Walburga was John Stroebel's mother. Second child, John Joseph Stroebel, Stroebel side. Third child, Adolf Stroebel, Stroebel side. All the kids had Stroebel names, and none had any names from the Krupp side or any other name. The only child they had in America in 1884 was Carl Anton Engelbert Stroebel. And up until today, I never gave it much thought where they got the name, because I'm a busy guy. I've got 3 little kids, and I've got a very challenging Air Force Reserve career that involves running 3 or 4 days a week. I'm very busy, and I work a full-time job, obviously. But we get to the names, and I see for the first time. Now, I went to Sigmaringen, Germany, this past July with my reserve unit. We went to Ramstein Air Base. Now, to all my buddies, I said, nope, I'm not going to Paris. I'm not going Hamburg. I'm going to Sigmaringen. And they said, what? Where is that? But I explained to them why, and they weren't understanding. I got down there, and I got a map, and I remembered there was a Carl Anton Street there, close to the church where my grandfather was baptized. So today I'm thinking about it, and I go on Google Maps, I'm looking, I said, son of a gun. I Googled Carl Anton and Sigmaringen. Carl Anton of Hohenzollern was the son of the occupants of the Sigmaringen Castle. And my great-grandparents lived very, very close to this castle. We're talking a matter of 3 blocks. And I said to myself, holy smokes, why did I just make this discovery today? Today. And I said, there it is, Carl Anton Engelbert. That's another additional name put in, which I don't know where, but it could be the masculine form of Engelbertha. And I said, wow. I said, my grandfather, I'm pretty sure, because he was named Otto Wilhelm Stroebel, that Wilhelm, he was named after Kaiser Wilhelm because Kaiser Wilhelm put them up at the Berlin City Palace. And we know because Ted tells me they worked at the Berlin City Palace. And I say, wow, look at that. He probably, in a way to say thanks to Kaiser Wilhelm, gave my grandfather the middle name of Wilhelm. And I could be right, could be wrong. It's possible. So I look at Carl Anton Engelbert Stroebel, and I see the young son that lived in that castle. And you can't help but think that John Stroebel is that type of individual to name their children after people who helped them. Okay. So my point is, all the names came from the Stroebel side of the family except for what I just told you. And it just does not jive with German naming conventions. It's almost as if she has completely cut herself off from her family and wants no one to know about them. I should tell you, Alfred Krupp, if you know anything about him. Alfred Felix Olwin Krupp, born in 1812 and died in 1887. If I can use one word to describe him, extremely eccentric. Extremely tall, extremely lanky, scary in sight, almost like an Ichabod Crane, the way he would walk, very lanky like this. He had the words used by William Manchester, violent hidden drives. He would try to light a match underwater for weeks and weeks and weeks until it would light. We know it wouldn't light. That's the kind of guy he was. He constantly raged, and I couldn't help but think, could he be bipolar? Does that run in my family? Does it? It is genetic, and it does run in my family. But we won't talk about that tonight. So that's Alfred Krupp. So I could see why my great-grandmother would want to completely distance herself and not let her children know at all where their origins in Germany began. And when she used the name Engelbertha Arnold as an alias, in August of 1885, they were married. John and Engelbertha were married in Sigmaringen at the church I went to visit, and I actually stood right there on the altar. Beautiful church, very, very old and very beautiful. And when you add up when their first child, John Stroebel Jr., was born, when they got married, she was 3 months pregnant. And there you have the birth of the idea of, we need an alias, we need one now. And thinking about this, I said, okay, they're in Sigmaringen. They got there from Berlin with Kaiser Wilhelm, and she needs to get married fast because any longer, and no one's going to marry her for obvious reasons. She's Protestant, and it's a Catholic church, John Stroebel's church. So I couldn't help but think, I said, what would I do in this situation? I would be Kaiser Wilhelm, and I would contact the church, or actually the nobility in the castle in Sigmaringen, and say, I understand you have my, for better words, my goddaughter, there, Engelbertha Krupp, and her husband. Please see to it that the church marries them speedily, with no questions. And the Hohenzollerns in that castle say, okay, Emperor, because I don't know how, she was able to be a stranger in that town and be married at 3 months, being 3 months pregnant. And and I could be wrong, but it seems logical. It seems like it's plausible that Wilhelm contacted the prince in that castle and said, make it happen, because I've known her a long time. It's the only way I could think of that she was able to get married there, being a stranger like that. But then comes the fact of this Engelbertha Arnold. And I say to myself, what I know about Engelbertha Arnold, John Stroebel Sr., his name appears on his nephew's baptism record, March of 1870. So we know he was there. He fought in the Franco-Prussian War in July. So between March and July, he makes a move and get mobilized with his Army Reserve unit. He's an officer with that unit. And they march over to France and they fight in the war. The war was a year plus long. And then he shows up at Villahugel. And I say to myself, he could not have shown up at Villahugel with this local girl who lived in Sigmaringen. It just does not seem plausible that he would go those hundreds of miles with this girl and brought this girl to battle, and then from the battle they went to Essen. Doesn't seem plausible. Then you have the story of Ted. Ted says they work for Kaiser Wilhelm at the Berlin City Palace. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how a regular nobody like John Stroebel finds his way into the president of Germany's castle, where he's employed by him as a bootblack. You need special access. You need a Krupp. You need a Krupp to get you in the door. A Krupp to say, Uncle Wilhelm, can I come in? Oh, Engelbertha, my dear, what's going on? Their mother and father have thrown us out. We want to get married and they don't approve. That's how you get into the Berlin City Palace. You don't knock on the door, find yourself there after, you worked at, Villa Hugel. So they either, they knew the Arnold and Sigmaringen, and they said, we're going to go ahead, you just say that you're my daughter and you can get married, and they don't even, they don't check. And that's what they did. And a curious thing, when I found a Barbara Biederman living 30 miles from Sigmaringen, Barbara Biederman was this Engelbertha Arnold's mother. She put on her birth record in Joseph Arnold. And when I found this Barbara Biederman, I found her, but she was married to an Anton Stroebel 30 miles away. I found it very, very interesting. But not all the church books are available. And I'm hoping that events that will happen in the next 30 days will change that. But I'll tell you at the end. So now I have all this information, a lot of it. The money trail, the revelations. Mom, where are we born? Essen. All right, thanks. Have a nice day. And I start making covert phone calls and emails to the Protestant Church of Essen, asking where I can get a copy of Alfred and Bertha Krupp's marriage record from 1853, Friedrich Krupp's baptism record from 1854. Oh, wait, they didn't have any children that were stillborn, anything like that. All they knew is I was writing a book on the Krupp dynasty. Didn't tell them why. Didn't tell anybody. I didn't want anybody to back off and not give me any information. And this individual was very, very accommodating and gave me everything. And I took my information, and it's in my book. And no, I did not. They did not have a baptism record for an Engelbertha Krupp. And you can ask me, well, why not? Why not? I don't know the real, honestly good answer. I can theorize that because from what I've read of in William Manchester's book, The Arms of Krupp, Alfred Krupp was a real basket case. He controlled, he raged, and when he wasn't raging, he was controlling. He put a lot of money into the Protestant Church of Essen, into the family's church named the Market Church in Essen. The crucifixes and the Bibles all had stamps on the back. It said personal property of Krupp. That's in William Manchester's book. There's a reason why he did all that. He controls what people will say, think and say publicly about him because he employed the whole city. That's my opinion. And Alfred Krupp, and I'll give you an example. Fritz Solling was his cousin. Very hardworking man, very loyal man, never wore a watch, and worked his fingers to the bone for Alfred Krupp. And he was a financial partner. And because when you're not incorporated, you have money problems because you don't have access to the capital. Fritz Solling, says William Manchester, asked him, he said, Alfred, why wouldn't you consider incorporating? That was it. That was the nail in the coffin. One time he asked him, and it was over between him, his family, and the Krupp Works. He was banished from the Krupp Works, frozen out, never allowed back on the grounds again. And William Manchester made a comment that really stuck in my mind. It said that It referred to Alfred Krupp in his thinking and his reasoning, where he was unforgiving right to the grave, were the words that he used. And I said, to the grave. I'm like, wow. Now I get the makeup of this guy, Alfred Krupp, my great-great-grandfather. Okay, now I know what I'm dealing with. So now he goes to what I think he goes to the church, and he orders the priest. He wants his daughter's baptism records destroyed. He says, I'm going to take her very existence. It's the kind of guy he is. And apparently they do it. And after all, the overwhelming evidence that I collected, the revelations, the money trail, everything adds up. The math adds up. But now I'm looking at this banishment. Well, first I looked at it and I was puzzled and I was frustrated and I didn't want to say, and I said, I came to the realization, I said, what I'm looking at is a banishment. And there are three published instances that I found. So there's the motive. Well, that's not the motive, but there's proof that this existed in the family that was passed on. This ideology of, see that young wife that Alfred Krupp von Bohlen und Holbeck married? You want your inheritance? Ditch her and ditch her now. That's what happened to Alfred Krupp, the one that served 12 years, convicted for 12 years. He had to, 1942, divorce her, where he would not get his inheritance, become the sole owner of the Krupp Works. And by the way, William Manchester says by doing that, he disinherits all of his siblings, which was illegal. Those words, illegal. And I should say in Germany, if I'm a father and I go to the probate court and say, I want to give it all to Johnny, none to Jane, and they're going to say to me, Mr. Krupp, please take a hike. We don't do that here. Have a nice day. Very extremely difficult time trying to get her excluded. It does not happen. She is entitled to the minimum of one half of that Krupp Works. So, I don't lose my train of thought here. You could see how he went into the church as the ultimate form of revenge. That was what he was all about, was revenge. Awful man. And this is what I believe happened. And it is the only way to explain why there is so much evidence of my great-grandmother's existence here, the revelations. When you go back to Germany, it doesn't add up. But you'll see in William Manchester's book, he quoted a letter that appeared in a book called The Letters of Alfred Krupp from 1828 to 1878 when he died. And I almost fell out of my chair when I saw one of those quotes, and I went, bingo. Here's my other piece of evidence. He uses certain terms of endearment towards his wife, Bertha. Keep in mind, my great-grandmother, you look at the census report, it says Bertha, not Engelbertha. I used Engelbertha because there's two John Stroebels and two Berthas, so I had to, and that was her birth name on the death record for her daughter. It said Engelbertha Stroebel. That's where I got that from. So now, you have William Manchester quoting from another book, Alfred Krupp's attempt at a term of endearment for his wife Bertha after one of the many, many, many arguments. Dear sweetie, dear Berth, the big one, dear best of Berthas. I said, dear best of Berthas. Okay, Dave. That tells me there's more than one Bertha. We know Bertha is my great-grandmother's name. She liked to go by that name. Said, my great-grandmother was very idealistic, very forward-thinking for a woman in her time to choose the love of a poor shoemaker over a dynasty. And I see that and I say, wow. I said, that implies more than one Bertha living under the same roof. One behaves well, the wife, while one does not behave well, the daughter. I said, look at that, look at that. And then I found a book. I ordered a book from Germany called Pictures of Krupp, Photography and History in the Industrial Age, written in 2003. And in the book is the big one. Testing. In the book, there's a photograph, which almost gives me whiplash. Now, I'm looking for a picture of my great-grandfather because I have 3 of him in his 80s, and he always had a mustache. So if I see a guy with a mustache, I'm really going to examine all the features. You know, the ears, the shape of the eyes, you know, the nose. Those are the main features you look at. And this one caught my attention. And when I saw it, I gasped for air. I went, oh, it's her. And this, I believe, if you can't see it, the girl on the lower left is my great-grandmother. I've examined the nose, the ears, the eyes. The eyes are the big giveaway. The ears belong to the same family. The nose is her father's nose exactly. And I said, it's her, but I got to prove it. So we're going to get a picture of, she was called Clara Bruch, B-R-U-C-H, wife of famous German music composer Max Bruch. And I said, we're going to get a picture of this Clara Bruch. I bet it's going to be completely different than this woman right here, this girl. Looks like she's about 20. So, again, I jump on Google, the expert I am, and I'm at work. I see that there's a book called Max Bruch and His Times by an English author. Wrote the book in 2006 named Chris Fifield. He's a classical music historian and a composer, orchestra. But the book on Google has photos. There's one of Clara Bruch, but it won't let you show it because it's copyrighted material. So I said, darn it. Let me find out where this book is. I go, Google tells you where by zip code who has this book. Rutgers. Oh, lunchtime at Rutgers. Here I go. Jumped in the car, and the ride seemed like it took an eternity. They were expecting me. They were going to take me to where the book was, music library, and I just got hold of the book and went like this, got to the page. I looked and I went, aha, 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 aha. I was right. Looks nothing like her, right? So I emailed the author, Chris Fifield, real friendly guy. So, hi, Chris. My name is Dave Stroebel. I'm from New Jersey. I'm an author. I'm writing a book on the Krupps. Didn't tell me anything else. I was wondering, they said that that's Clara Bruch. Is that right? Is that who that is? And I took a digital picture and emailed it to him. And for lack of the exact words, but I might miss a word or two, he said, in my view, the girl on the left looked like the woman on the right. You sure they didn't have a daughter? It's like, boy, how do we answer this? I don't know, Chris. They won't answer my questions at the Krupp archives. I don't know. And I promise to be extremely truthful throughout this whole process. Because why? If you lied about one little insignificant fact, there goes my credibility. So I was very careful I answered all these questions, or I would just simply say, no comment. So he says, no. He says, and that picture is dated 1868, 69. Clara Bruch would only be about 12 or 13 years old, not even old enough to meet Max Bruch, who wasn't even at this, as a director at Sonderstrom. No, it's not her. And then I contacted the, excuse me, the Max Bruch archives. And I said, again, wink in my eye. I said, hi, I'm writing a book on the Krupp dynasty, and I was in touch with author Chris Fifield. You gave him that photograph of Clara Bruch. I said, do you have another one that I could use, but not the one that you gave him? And they said, sure. And I said, I'll be sure to give you full credit, and they reminded me to do that. And I got that photograph. Wasn't even close to being that girl. So I write the Krupp archives and ask them, I said, do you know who this woman is in the picture? Because it's not Clara Brooke. Didn't receive a response back. Now you have to understand, think about this logically. They're hired PhDs at the Krupp archive. They don't know the dirty laundry of the family. They don't know who used to, chew their toenails late at night or have other disgusting habits. They're only told what they need to know to convey to the public. They don't know all the dirty stuff. It's been laundered. So here I have was probably the only photograph to exist. Well, why did it exist? Well, you could surmise like I did when Alfred Krupp was screaming at the top of his lungs that his daughter disobeyed his orders, which nobody does. That he ordered all her photographs to be destroyed, just like he ordered his wife's belongings packed away and put in a warehouse because she, his own wife, stood up to him and left. Yeah. So here you have a sympathetic housemaid, maybe, who says, oh my God, I got to save this, You have to, preserve something. So this is my strongest piece of evidence to date. Now, the revelations are equally as strong, but this is tangible. Nobody can identify this girl for some reason, but I can. And if you look close enough, you'll see the ears and the eyes and the nose belong in that family. That's her. Let's see. In the book where I got this photograph, there's narrative in there by author, editor, it says, Claus Tenfeld. And I just looked last week, and God rest his soul, he died about a year ago. But I asked him questions about another photograph and this one. And of course, he's hired. He doesn't know what took place a long time ago. In the narrative, he says that he is concerned because there are noticeable gaps in the Krupp family photo albums at the archives. And he is unable to provide an explanation why. Well, you know what I put in my book. I can tell you why. I said too many photographs of Engelbertha appeared in them. And try as they might to exclude her out of them, it just wouldn't work. So they had to get rid of the photographs. That's why there's a noticeable gap, unexplainable noticeable gap in those Krupp family photo albums. And so the rest of my case with that. Now to what I call the motive. Why do all this? Why turn your evil power against your daughter like that? To get even. He's got a get even mentality. I can tell you William Manchester wrote in his book, when Bertha Krupp was born, we're talking now Engelbertha's niece, Friedrich's daughter. It's in his book that Alfred Krupp glared at his new granddaughter and without saying a word and marched away. Glared, he used in that book. You can imagine how he felt about women, how he felt about his own daughter, especially his own daughter who was so disobedient, so progressive, forward-thinking, like Engelbertha Krupp was. This is an interesting point. He was so infuriated because he really had his heart set on, his mind set on his daughter being the sole heiress because there's published facts in the Arms of Krupp that Alfred Krupp seriously considered disinheriting Friedrich because of his health and because he feared, and the word that he used was slug to describe he sired a slug. A lazy kid who didn't want to do anything, not even take over the Krupp Works when Alfred Krupp died. Alfred Krupp had a lingering fear that the Krupp Works would fall into state hands because there would be no male heirs to keep it in the family. Well, I say that he went to the extent of destroying her baptism records because she at that time in 1874 was, in his mind, the only person between the two children who could possibly carry us on, because the slug, Alfred, no chance. So he's infuriated now because now this thing is going to go to the state eventually when he dies. But soon, Fritz turns around. He gets more mature. And Fritz there is I think he's about 15 years old. And his health improves and his energy picks up. And now he does pretty well for himself. But at that time, Alfred was pretty much set that Fritz was going to be a slug his whole life and this Krupp Works was going to go right down the drain. And she didn't want it. She didn't want to stay in the family. She chose the poor guy over the dynasty. Imagine what was going through his mind. God damn it, And so he's in revenge mode, and he is livid. What's the worst you can do when you are in that state? Is to make sure you do something so unholy, you unbirth someone, and you destroy her birth records. And I could say probably if the church in Sigmaringen went and checked, just say John and Engelbertha went to the church in Mengen, 8 miles away from Sigmaringen, to get married, because that's where John's last reported location where he lived. And that church checked with the market church, right? And they came back and said, well, we checked for your baptism and your confirmation. They'd never heard of you. You have no record of your baptism. What's going on? What is this? Then she backs away and just runs. Goes back and tells John, what's happened? Something's happened. The market church says there's no record of my baptism. No record at all. Just hypothesize that situation. Okay, plan B. Let's get married in Sigmaringen, 8 miles away. We'll say you're somebody else, and I'm going to get the Hohenzollerns to help us out because, Kaiser Wilhelm. And that's how they pulled that off. It could be the way they pulled it off. I could be right. I could be wrong. But it sounds plausible. Okay. So there's the motive. She was going to be the one to carry on the Krupp Works. He's livid. I'm going to fix her forever. She fixed this Krupp Works forever. I'll fix her forever. I mentioned 3 times when disinheritance was held over the heads of the Krupps. The first time in the arms of Krupp by William Manchester, it says when Fritz was a young boy, his health was failing, and Alfred seriously considered disinheriting him and setting him up as a gentleman farmer. Well, remember the big fear? And William Manchester talks about that. The big fear of not letting this Krupp Works go to the state. It's got to stay in the family. Why willingly disinherit your son unless you got somebody else? You got this whippersnapper daughter, right? And it turns out she has 3 boys, where Friedrich had 2 girls. Not the ideal scenario for the Krupp Works to continue in the family name. But those 3 boys didn't come till 1876. I have a chapter in my book called Why Bertha Really Left, Mother Bertha Krupp. William Manchester reports that the family tells him that Bertha tried to get Friedrich away from her father because Alfred was kind of owning Fritz in a proprietary sense. and that taking him away from her. And, well, they had it out, and she was going to go back and she was going to get Fritz. Well, and this is 1876, and the Krupps tell Manchester that the reason why Bertha walked out on Alfred, left him forever, is because of Fritz. And Alfred was taking him away from her in a proprietary sense, and she was going to get Fritz. Well, ladies and gentlemen, she wound up walking out the front door without Friedrich. Now, as soon as she opened the front door, Friedrich would have leapfrogged over her to get out the front door. He feared his father that much. And yet she left without him, which was very puzzling. It just didn't add up. That's why she left him, because of taking Friedrich away from her in a proprietary sense. Well, why did you leave without Friedrich? Then why'd you leave? Just stay. But I'll tell you why Bertha really left. 1876, John Stroebel Jr. was born. But this all happened, 1882 is when Bertha left Alfred. And they say that's the reason why, but I say no. In my book, you know what the reason why Bertha left Alfred? Because she felt so guilty that she didn't stand with her daughter over marry this gentleman, shoemaker, that now they've announced in 1883 plans to leave Germany forever. John left in November of 1882 and arrived in Lower Manhattan on December 5th, 1882. So, they announced to the family, we're leaving forever. Now, Bertha, wanting the social circles of being the wealthiest, family in Europe, all of a sudden now reacts many years later and says, wait, no, you can't leave. I've had it with your father, and now, I want to spend time with you and my grandkids. Too late, we're leaving. She now has got some, gusto. She goes to Alfred and says, look what you've done. Do you realize that they're leaving forever? He doesn't care. She walks out without Fritz, because that's not the reason why she went in there. She went in there to try to convince him not to stop feeling and thinking the way he does towards her, accept her back into the family. But John leaves in December of 1882. 3 months later, Engelbertha heads over there with, John Jr., Adolf, and my grandfather, who was 11 months old on that trip. So there you have it on that. So we talk about the motive. We know that that there's been 3 published instances where the Krupps threatened their kids with disinheritance. And it happened with Friedrich at a young age. It happened with Alfred, and it happened, where was the third one now? Let me find it. Alfred Krupp von Bohlen, who was convicted at the Nuremberg trials. His mother, Bertha, tried to get him disinherited. She was never happy that her husband, Gustav was married into the family, married Bertha Krupp. He was the one that aligned the Krupp Works with the Nazis. Women could not speak their mind, although Bertha Krupp, I have to give her credit, it's recorded in the arms of Krupp that she made derogatory comments as she's getting up and leaving the room with her husband in the room. Now, Gustav was a super Nazi. He carefully hung up his uniform after, he served, and he was an engineer, and now he was married to the richest woman in Europe. But that was the situation with them. And we're almost done. I think we're going to wrap up at 9 o'clock. But they would not disinherit Alfred, the occupying forces. And so here you have, right from a relative, the great-grandson of Engelbertha Krupp. Why I decided to pursue this path, I don't know. It's what I'm doing, and I feel it's the right thing to do. How would you feel if your relative or your mother had her existence wiped away. I don't know, it's just the way I am. I decided to pick up her fight and try and right a wrong. I can share with you that I've been fighting the inheritance settlement in the German courts. And I can tell you, September 19th, I received the last of many letters from the probate court in Essen. I stated my case and said that she is the legal heiress. I said she was banished, and by law, she gets half anyway. So they explained to me, they said, well, what we do here is we can tell you if it was executed correctly. Beyond that, we can't change anything. So you'll have to go higher, but I know what they were referring to. So they rendered a ruling, and they said that they had found the last will and testament of Alfred Krupp in a vault. A week after they sent me a letter saying, okay, we didn't find a last will in Eberstein, something like that. So, and in light of the revelations, your book, we will reverse the decision upon credible evidence of Engelbertha Krupp's existence. So I said, okay. I said, when I show them what I have from I'll give them a heart attack. So my plan is to extract DNA from Bertha Krupp in Germany and compare it to her daughter's DNA in Weehawken Cemetery in North Bergen. Now, where we stand now is September 19th, the pleading was rejected, as I hoped it would have, because they don't have the power on the lower courts to make a constitutional decision like this. So now I'm adjusting the original pleading with additional verbiage to reflect the Federal Constitutional Court of Germany, which is their Supreme Court. And in that pleading, 15-page pleading, says basically the merger between Thyssen Steel and Friedrich Krupp AG is illegal because it amounts to thievery, because she was, by all social customs with the three boys, she should have been the sole heiress, not her brother. And that's where we are right now. The pleading will go to Germany Supreme Court. Hopefully in about 3 weeks. I have to finish it in the next few days. But she's finally going to get her day in court. And while the verdict could potentially reverse that inheritance from 1887 and make her the sole heiress, which means all of us in the United States will overnight become, it is what it is, financial heirs of the Krupp dynasty. And who knows how they will treat that with ThyssenKrupp, because it's two companies now merged into one. Now, I stated in the pleading, I said that merger was illegal because it sums up to a stolen corporation that belonged to my great-grandmother. Whether it was known or not, the law says you can't disinherit any of your siblings. So what we're depending on heavily is the Constitutional Court in Germany to approve the final, let me back off, a more definitive answer than just he said, she said, a picture. And I've got a lot of evidence. It's not my story. It's three relatives. Two knew each other, but those two have never even heard of the one in Lakehurst, New Jersey named Caroline Marchuk, who dropped the big bomb. And they all contributed to this story with revelations, photographs, and documents. I put it together because, I spent 13 years in the Air Force Reserve Command history program. And, this affected, my family. My family is here today. They're exiled. I'm here today. I never should have been here, if you think of it like that, because my grandmother should never have met my grandfather, because he never should have been in the United States to begin with. And they were married in 1906 in Hoboken. And the way you look at it, it's an amazing story. I was told by an attorney from Rumson, who, when I went in there with my 2 books looking for some copyright information, he advised. He looked at me long and hard. He took his glasses off, and he said, and he stared at me again. See if I blinked, and he said, "Do you realize this has all the earmarks of one of the greatest stories ever told, and another Anastasia?" And I quietly swallowed. And I said, "No." I said, "I never thought of that." He says, "Have you ever thought about, adapting this to the screen?" I said, "No." I said, "I have a story to tell, and if that happens later on, but I have a story to tell, and it's gonna, it's big. It has potential of changing German history, and I can tell you that because my great-grandmother was banished, this is what I feel. It had a definite impact on the course of World War II as we know it today, how World War II, played out. I say my progressive, forward-thinking great-grandmother, do you think she would have continued making munitions if she would have taken over the Krupp Works? No. Maybe steal flowers, things like that, women type of things, maybe appliances, and they were in that field, made spoons and dishes, plates on the metal side. I say she would have stopped the armament side of that production in 1887 and would have gone to like appliances, but away from munitions, absolutely. So what would Hitler have done without all that superior Krupp steel and munitions? You think he would have gone? Yeah, but Krupp employed the whole city. He had the drive. He had the superior products. He had the reputation of never failing on a product or a delivery. This guy worked. He was very strange. He couldn't sleep at night. He would make notes to his workers in the Krupp Works. You're lazy. You came in 5 minutes late today. Blah, blah, blah. He believed that his own exhalations would kill him at night. So he would fall asleep and wake up suddenly and get up and wake up and just stay awake all night and work and write notes to employees, things like that. But this is what I believe. I looked at it and I said, wait a minute. Not only would I think that, but wow. Gustav von Bohlen und Holbach married Bertha. They had Alfred from Nuremberg. Remember, he got convicted. Well, you know what? Because my great-grandmother was banished, Bertha married Gustav, and Alfred Krupp von Bohlen was able to see the light of day. What if my great-grandmother wasn't banished? Then Friedrich wouldn't have gotten the inheritance, blown his brains out in 1902 because of a scandal with underage boys at the Isle of Capri in Italy, excuse me. And it would have been Engelbertha. She and whoever she met in Germany, not my, scratch that. I got mixed up there for a second. But my point is this. Alfred Krupp von Bohlen would never have been born unless Gustav had Bertha had to be fixed up with Gustav von Bohlen. And the only way that could have happened was because my great-grandmother was banished. So that is my take on it. And could be, the way it could have played out, maybe not. Always offer the other side of the coin. This could be one of the greatest stories ever told. Maybe not. I say it is. Definitely. So that concludes my talk for tonight. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer any questions. And there are books in the back that you can purchase if you want to read the whole investigation. And there's more to tell you than what I told you tonight.
That picture, who was in that picture? Is that the Krupp family? Can you identify those people?
Sure. This is Alfred Krupp, born 1812, died in 1887. This is his wife, Bertha Eichhoff Krupp. They were married in 1853. She died in 1888. This is their daughter, Engelbertha Krupp. Born, I don't know. Don't know. their son Friedrich Krupp, who took over the Krupp Works, known as Fritz. One of these gentlemen is a doctor. The title of the photograph is Krupp Family with Friends, and taken 1868-69. Sure, this is Alfred Krupp, the Cannon King, and my book is called The Cannon King's Daughter. I thought I would, really make him turn in his grave by titling the book that. Mother, daughter, this is Engelbertha Krupp, Bertha Krupp, their son Friedrich. These are family friends. One of them is a doctor. I'm not quite sure which one it was. But it was dated 1868/69. Anybody else have any questions?
Take me back to Jersey City.
Sure.
What was it, 1900?
They immigrated to Jersey City in 1882 and 1883. First John, then Engelbertha.
You have a suitcase full of money. You just came over from Germany. And you moved, as you said, 10 to 12 different locations.
It would be mostly diamonds, things like that are smaller. You can sew into the hems of your children's clothes and yours. They came over in second-class tickets. That's a lot of money. I added it up.
If you had this money, what would you rent?
Good question. You'd have to ask them that. The only thing I could say is maybe they did not want anyone to know how much money they had or anything about their background, where they had to fill out forms. Where you're from? Where'd you come from? The city? They try to conceal their past so well. On the census records, Engelbertha, when the census taker would come around, would throw the census taker off and tell them that her own husband's birthday would be other than February. I think March was written on there. And would use 3 different years of birth for her, but always say it was June 13th. So it was very clever. It was very apparent what they were doing. Very apparent. They would. How did this story come down? From who in my family? I'll tell you. My grandfather never knew. We all, as the Stroebels under Otto Wilhelm Stroebel, never knew this story. But Caroline did. Caroline is the granddaughter of Adolf Stroebel, my grandfather's brother. My grandfather died in 1928. John Stroebel was living at my grandmother's house for 3 months and died in 1930. So the Albany Stroebels didn't know anything about this. It seems that only the Adolf Stroebel family knew. So I surmise that in 1930, when John Stroebel died of uremia at my grandmother's home on Webster Avenue in Jersey City, he called Adolf and said, well, I'm sorry, he didn't call him, there was no phones. And Adolf came over and said, son, sit down, I have something I want to tell you. Well, I haven't been truthful about our past in Germany. And you know your cousin John Sedan? Well, they named him after where I said the Stroebels were from in France. He told everybody, all of his 3 kids, that the Stroebels originated from Sedan, France. So what happens? His son, one of his sons names one of his sons John Sedan Stroebel. How do you back off of that? You don't. You leave it alone. And so I surmise that John Stroebel Sr. sat Adolf down and said, knowing he was dying, saying, I have something to tell you. Your mother was from the Krupp family in Germany, the ones that make all the ammunition and steel. And they gave us $10,000 to immigrate with because they didn't approve of us. And maybe some other things that Caroline just forgot over the years. And that's how I surmise the story was passed on. Adolf told his granddaughter, Caroline. Caroline held on to that story. And when I met her for the first time, I contacted her in 2008. She told me that story, along with the other revelations. And John Stroebel came over in steerage in December. She came over in the second-class cabins, which is really first class without the bar. So you don't want to go and leave your valuables and your kids and go drink in a bar in the saloon. You just don't opt for the saloon part. And it's a little bit cheaper, but still in the thousands of dollars to come over. Any other questions? There's controversy over that. His future son-in-law, his 16-year-old daughter was fixed up by Kaiser Wilhelm II to Gustav von Bohlen und Holbach. They married, had 6 children. One of them was Alfred Krupp. You only got to use the name Krupp when you ran the Krupp Works. They were the von Bohlen and Holbachs. And when Alfred got the whole Krupp Works, he would be the one to run the Krupp Works. He was then allowed to use Krupp. There was a Adolf Hitler allowed a provision called the Lex Krupp that would keep the Krupp Works in the family, even though the next proprietor did not have the name Krupp. He would use the name Krupp, but only that person would use. That's why Gustav Krupp von Bohlen und Holbach, Bertha Krupp's husband, got to use that name. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Just want to clear something in my understanding. Friedrich disinherited Engelbertha, his daughter, correct?
Friedrich was Engelbertha's brother.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the father's name
was Alfred Krupp.
Alfred Krupp. Thank you. He disinherited Engelbertha.
Yes, he did.
So how did Engelbertha still have $10,000?
Good question. What I surmise from my records, I have a death record for their daughter who died in 1877, their second child. On that, it makes reference to John and Engelbertha living in an apartment in Sigma Riggin. The word apartment was in there. And I said, apartment, okay. So they had no money, and John was still a shoemaker, because that's the occupation on the passenger manifest. Exactly. So it is surmised that she went back up, and I'll explain why. Engelbertha left Germany through the port of Hamburg. A very unusual route, I'm told by genealogists, for someone living way down in the farmlands of Baden-Württemberg. John left the normal route out of that area would be through the port of Antwerp in Belgium. That's where John left out of. But she, for some reason, went the more expensive route further north than her husband. And this is where I surmise that for her to afford the trip to go to America and those tickets, she had to get money from her parents. So it was before John left, because they had to know before they left that they were going to get this money from the Krupps. They couldn't afford the second-class tickets for 4 individuals. No. And the 5th would have been John in steerage. So I surmised from timing that they got the money first, then made the plans for the 4 second-class tickets and steerage. Yes, sir. I already started working on that. There's something called cemetery law, and it goes like this. Engelbertha Krupp right now is in a grave at Weehawken Cemetery in North Bergen. The person who now owns the grave is the most senior person in my family, in her family, and that is my, now she's 84, 84-year-old Dorothy Borches. Dorothy Stroebel Borches, who lives in Midland Park. When she passes away, it's my uncle, her brother, who lives in Florida, but he is suffering from Alzheimer's severely, so he probably would not be. Then it would fall down to the oldest grandchild, great-grandchild, sorry, who would be my cousin Nancy, who is just about 70 years old and is one of the board of trustees for the Engelbertha Krupp Foundation. So she would be the owner of that grave. But I've already started, talked to a cemetery attorney who deals with cemetery law, but we're quite not close enough. We have to run this pleading through the court system in Germany, and going to ask them to begin an inquiry, examine the Krupp Works internal documents. We're looking for a large payout between 1874 and 1882 in the area like miscellaneous that can't be explained. would have been the money given to his daughter. We're going to be looking at things like inside the archives, similar photographs like this that they've kind of pushed aside because they really don't know who the heck she is. We're looking for things like that.
My curiosity is why they wanted to keep secret their wealth, which was not a great wealth, but it was some wealth. Would it be that, I'm just assuming, is that Engelbertha was disinherited by her father, and to destroy baptism records and birth records had to have a great deal of anger and wrath. Were they afraid possibly that the grandfather's wrath would follow them to the new world, and because of noted German precision may come after them here?
It's interesting you should say that.
Because I'm thinking that if he had such control and hostility, why would he want his daughter to be able to have a new life? He didn't want that life to happen in Germany, where it would have been easy for her. So would it be possible that he wanted to make her life and the husband's life very difficult?
Right to the grave.
Descendant.
Right to the grave. I'll tell you what, funny you should mention that. I'll share something with you. There's a little spooky, I don't want to call it hokey pokey. Yeah, I believe that her upbringing was so terrible, so violent. This character, Alfred Krupp, she did not want any of the roads going back to Essen. John Stroebel Jr., when he fought in the Spanish-American War, he told the army, because his dad told him, Dad, where are we from? Sigmaringen, Austria. Now, realizing the army didn't mess around and wanted absolute obedience and truth, John Stroebel Sr., I believe, gave a half-truth and told his son, we are from Sigmaringen, Austria. That's what's on John Jr.'s discharge papers, where he was born. And I'll give me 1 second. We wrap up this thought. And you're going to find this a surprise, and I thought it was a very big surprise when this lady contacted me. When I got contacted out of the blue on LinkedIn by a lady named Doris Cannon, she said that in her younger life, she worked for the CIA, and she was a remote viewer. I have never heard of a remote viewer before in my life. She worked for the OSS. Does that sound familiar? And she told me that she had to leave Germany or they were going to kill her. I said, what do you mean? And then I said, do you know what you're saying? And then that angered her. And then she kind of pushed back, and I never heard from her again. I looked up on the internet, and she does not have any strong credentials in what she says she has. So I left her alone, and I did not want to pursue that. But I thought it was amusing, and for what it was worth, that she said, your great-grandmother had to leave Germany or they were going to kill her. I'm like, what do you mean by that? I don't want to pursue it because I have to be very careful what sources I use. I have to be very credible sources. But yes, they tried to block all the roads that led back to Essen because this guy was such a horror. They did not want their children exposed or, going back there and saying, Grandpa, and screaming back, get away from me, you wretched little piece of so-and-so. Any more questions? Yes, sir? Good question. The Krupp doesn't exist in Germany anymore. Arndt Krupp von Bohlen, Alfred Krupp's son, didn't want anything to do with the business. He waived his inheritance and set up a foundation after his father died, and it became incorporated, something Alfred Krupp never, ever wanted, and it merged with ThyssenKrupp. And yes, there are two family lines in Germany. today, the von Bohlen und Holbachs and the Wilmoskis. I have one of the von Bohlens as one of my Facebook friends. It's Harold's great-great-grandson. Harold was one of Gustav and Bertha's kids. And I kept the conversation very, very short, just with all the respect that a neurosurgeon should have, because he's a neurosurgeon in Germany. And I said, with all due respect, are you related to Gustav von Bohlen und Holbach and Bertha Krupp? And he said, yes, my great-great-grandfather was Harold. He didn't want to say Gustav. He said Harold. But, yes.
Well, just one quick question, maybe an observation. Several times you've mentioned members of this family wanting to just completely ignore their inheritance. The richest family in Europe at that time.
Ignore their inheritance?
Or
to get their kids to behave the way they want them.
Well, so the last guy didn't want his inheritance and incorporated. Right. Others didn't want the inheritance either. Why so many people? Why would they want?
I gather, reading the Robes of Krupp, Alfred Krupp was such such a mean son of a bitch. They wanted to put as much distance as they could between them. Like Friedrich tried to enlist in the army and went into the officer corps in Karlsruhe. And when he couldn't make it through the physical, they found he was asthmatic. Disqualified him right away. And the reaction that William Manchester writes in his book, that he was angrily sullen when he was forced to go back to a cheerful Alfred Krupp with arms open wide. And you can just see he was trying to get away from his father. Yeah, you got to read the book. And I'm hoping that this does make the jump to the screen. It deserves to make the jump to the screen because of, who has the right to unbirth somebody because she does not have an existence. Yes, sir.
How did the family deal with that? In other words, they had a daughter in the household for 16 years, 18 years, and then the daughter was gone, and how did they explain her absence?
No paparazzi back then. No flash bulbs. You had to sit. You see this photograph? From what I read, you have to sit still. Like that. Now, there were photographs. Had there been photographs, there's one, but we know that there were large unexplainable gaps in Krupp family photo albums. Chalk it up to control, the money factor, the fear factor. The guy just didn't control with money, he controlled with fangs, and he can ruin your life, and he did. And
Nobody would do detective work, right? Nobody would dare to do detective work.
No. If you even mention, something like, why don't you incorporate, Alfred? That was the end of you.
We're winding down to really one more question and one more question.
If you were to prevail, is there any estimate of what the settlement would be?
I don't care. But I should care, because if it's fallen into my hands, I have to be responsible enough, or whoever is going to be designated as, who's going to manage it. You can hire somebody for that. What would happen is the shares now owned, 25% of the Krupp side of the ThyssenKrupp is owned by the Alfred Krupp von Bohlen Foundation. The Ayatollahs own a big hunk in Iran. So my great-grandmother would be designated the sole heiress. And I guess we as a family would come together, and I can tell you honestly, I am doing 110% of all this work. The relatives are like, wow, this is great work you're doing. I set the foundation up. I wrote the business plan. I wrote the bylaws. I did everything. Because I'm the guy with all the information. I know. I may not be able to tell them in a 10-minute sitting, but from what I've seen, I'm convinced. There's no doubt I wouldn't be here tonight talking to you. I would not be sacrificing so much of my time to researching, going to Germany, going I almost made it to Villa Hugel, but it didn't happen.
Just who was it you're suing, though?
Sorry?
Who was it you're suing?
I'm not suing anybody. I'm just trying to get the courts to recognize that that this decision has to be reversed because it was done incorrectly. That he deliberately tried to conceal the fact that he destroyed his own daughter's birth records. And you know, with that, the one true way to find out and put this whole thing to rest, but there's too much. There's too much. Is to compare DNA samples, and the German Supreme Court's going to realize that. The only way to resolve this is to compare the DNA from Bertha Krupp and daughter. I know it's entails, you got to get a long bone, you got to get an opening about like that, and you have to extract it, and I have the company that does it. They already quoted me it's going to take up all my allowance. Let's just put it that way.
I Zoom.
Right. So you're leaving us hanging. How do we find out what happened?
DavidStroebel.com.
Right, and also watch the newspapers. Watch the newspapers, because I really believe as this unfolds, it's going to be a very, very large newsmaker. I truly do. All right, now we've been sitting here for 2 hours. I do thank you all. Dave will remain here to answer remaining questions. But before we put you to sleep, and I don't want to do that.
It's 1 minute too.
That's right. Let's say thank you to David for a wonderful presentation. If you have any questions, please come on up and address them to David. By the way, this book is on sale in the rear of the room, and if indeed you want to purchase one, David will gladly sign it.
There's more information in it that I could have told you. Good night, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed this program. For more information on the Center for World War II Studies, visit brookdalecc.edu/pages/730.asp. This program series is available for sponsorship by corporations and organizations. You can find out more information about sponsorship at bit.ly/content sponsorship. We produce this program in the studios of Lubetkin Global Communications in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, on the web at lubetkin.net. This program is copyright Lubetkin Communications, and all rights are reserved. No reposting or other use of this program may be made without written permission from the copyright owner. For Paul Zygo and everyone at the Brookdale Center for World War II Studies, this is Steve Lubetkin. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you out there on the net. Take good care.